The 90-day trial law. This is the policy which allows workers to be fired without redress in their first 3 months of a new job. It has had no positive impact on employment whatsoever. The law was introduced, as you may remember, in the first term of the national government, and the aim was to make it easier for workers to get a foot in the door, especially marginalised workers who would have found it hard otherwise to get a job. But a new report commissioned by Treasury and released today found no evidence at all that the policy increased the number of people hired by the average firm. I spoke earlier this afternoon to the Employment Relations Minister, Michael Woodhouse. He claims this policy was never about increasing the number of people hired. Rather, it was about preventing jobs being lost.
Anybody who has hired or been an employer will know that people, when they leave, a decision needs to be made about whether to replace them. And what we needed to do was to create a framework which encouraged employers to continue to invest in people and equipment at a time when there was significant uncertainty. Now, that won't reflect in job growth, but it would have reflected in job loss and a net drop in the number of jobs had they not had that.
Well, where's your evidence for that?
Well, I'm not saying...
Where's your evidence for that, Minister?
There is evidence in the fact that MB is saying employers were using this when they had the opportunity. And we got out of a recession with far fewer jobs lost than Treasury were predicting. They were predicting over 9%.
Where's your evidence that this policy helped prevent job loss? Where's your evidence?
The Treasury in 2009 were predicting more than 9% unemployment. We never got near that.
Yeah, but where's your evidence that this policy contributed to lesser rates of unemployment? Where's your evidence?
What I'm saying is there were a number of policies the government put in place to make sure that the effects of the recession were blunted.
Okay, so you don't have any evidence of that claim then, do you?
Well, now you're asking me to say whether or not there was evidence of job loss. I'm suggesting that that's actually one of the most important parts of this, and Motu themselves have not researched that because it's very difficult to do.
Let's look at the reason that the government gave, the national-led government gave, back in 2008, December of 2008. The Minister of Labour was Kate Wilkinson at the time, and she said, I quote, "The 90-day trial will provide real opportunities for people at the margins of the labour market." Now, this group, Motu, commissioned by Treasury, went and had a look at this, and they look at a lot of people who can be at the margins of the labour market. They looked at people who'd been on the dole, recent migrants, people who've been out of work for more than a year, Māori, Pacific, young people. And I'll quote you what they found. "For none of these people did we find that the person hired was more likely to be one of these types of people." So I put it to you that on your own terms, the policy has failed.
Well, I haven't had a chance to read the report in detail to give an estimate of the methodology that they've used to make that conclusion. But I am satisfied that there is evidence in other research that MB have done that is the case, and that research includes what the NGO sector are telling us.
So you don't accept the findings of this report? I mean, I could quote to you because actually it pretty much said that this policy has had no impact at all, except for the fact that it has helped employers a little bit in terms of their costs, in terms of hiring. But other than that, it seems to have had no material impact at all. Are you basically saying that you don't think that the report is credible?
No, I don't. I certainly accept the findings that there has been no material increase in job numbers, but I would challenge whether or not that was the sole purpose of the policy. I would also add that one of the biggest criticisms of the 90-day trial period was that there would be an increase in the churn, with employees losing their jobs callously before the 90-day trial period was up. There's absolutely no evidence.
No, I accept that.
Of worker turnover.
No, that's right.
That many commentators were worried about.
No, I accept that. That's exactly what it does say. But given that we are now through the GFC, and you seem to be saying in the early part of this interview that was the big push as to why you proceeded with this, and you now accept that there's been no influence on hiring, why not drop the policy now?
Because I think we still have a challenge with youth unemployment. We've been talking this week about refugees and migrants more generally, and if there is an ongoing body of work. It is to continue to encourage employers to give those people a go, confident that the 90-day trial period is there. And I think the fact that there hasn't been high levels of churn in that period is an example of when people are motivated, want to put their hand up and say, give me a go, even though I don't have the experience here in New Zealand, that can have a successful outcome.
Even though this report says none of those groups that we've talked about, had helped them at all. That's what the report says.
I think the jury's still out on that.
Yeah. I go to the conclusion. They say, we conclude that the main benefit of the policy was a decrease in dismissal costs for firms. We've talked about that. They also say, while many employees faced increased uncertainty about their job security for 3 months after being hired, surely that is reason enough to say, look, if this policy isn't providing employment and it's making workers feel uncertain about their jobs, let's just forget about it.
Well, one of the reasons the employees faced that level of uncertainty was because of the irrational fear that was generated by Labor and the unions, fear that is absolutely unfounded according to this research. So if you wanted to suggest that there needed to be a change, it would be a change in the sort of rhetoric that we've been hearing from the left.
All right. And you are going to continue with the policy?
No plans to change it at the moment, Guyan.
Thanks very much for joining us with that. Really do appreciate your time, Minister. That's the Workplace Relations Minister, Michael Woodhouse.